Hi, I'm Nancy Crevier. I'm the editor here at the Newtown Bee in Newtown, Connecticut.
Now, last week we had our first discussion of the new year, and over the course of the week on WPKN News, I brought up a couple of different items that I read about in the Newtown Bee. The first of which, Nancy, was the inoculation, the vaccine moving forward at Churchill Village.
Right.
And I wonder, what have you heard as someone with their ear to the ground in Newtown about the vaccine? Because what I'm hearing from my neighbors here in Newtown and the surrounding areas is concern about A, the lack of availability of the vaccine, and B, the cumbersome process of signing up and finding a place to get it.
That is addressed actually in the issue of January 22nd. Our health director, Donna Culbert, has been very upfront with us, and everybody is not going to be first in line. Right now, people in Newtown who are age 75 and over can register for an appointment, but we don't know yet how much of the vaccine we're going to get. And it's still a little fuzzy as to how that's going to happen. They're starting to work on setting up a more of a community sort of vaccination. But some of the people who are eligible right now may find that it's quicker for them to go to another, like a hospital or somewhere else where they'll also be eligible. It's still in the works. And Donna is doing a great job about keeping the Newtown Bee informed about as soon as people have a place to go and can go there. Of course, nationwide, there is a concern about the amount of vaccine that's going to be available. And people are just going to have to be really patient, and people have to continue to be concerned about how they're protecting not only themselves, but other people through the protocols.
And what have the numbers been like in town?
Our numbers, unfortunately, there has been an uptick, and we have had a few more deaths in Newtown, which is incredibly sad. Because we're still at the point where so many people cannot have their usual ceremonies that they would have to say goodbye to somebody. Donna, again, this is something that's addressed in this week's issue of the Newtown Bee, that it's family gatherings and family situations where she's seeing the greatest numbers go up. There people within the families are passing it on to each other. And then you have to be concerned about it being passed on to the community.
It's just beyond belief as we approach, almost a year now. I want to invite people who might be checking us out on YouTube down in the comment section. I've put a link to the Newtown Bee that they could visit. What else should we expect in this coming edition? And then I'll double back to more of the stuff that we talked about last week to see if there's any updates.
Well, this week we've got two great human interest stories for readers, and one of them actually does deal with COVID. We are going to be introducing people to a COVID survivor, Chad Werden, who has the unfortunate notoriety of being one of the very, very few people in the whole nation to have undergone a double lung transplant. And that is because of COVID complications. He is, so people are going to want to take a look at that story. Just a reminder, and this is part of a series that our associate editor, John Boquette, has been doing with COVID survivors, some of whom, because we know that there are complications that people are not aware of that can happen from having COVID. Some people get a little sniffle, but some people undergo a double lung transplant. The other story of human interest story that I think people are going to be interested in involves the late Ross Salvo, a 12-year-old boy whose family has recently made a wonderful contribution, a wonderful donation through a foundation in his name to our Newtown Police Department. And I think people are going to really want to read about this Rossum kid.
Is there anything you could tell us?
Well, I don't want to give away everything. I think that people really want to read this story.
Fair enough. Hey, listen, this would have been something that I would have done an audio tour of for sure. Have you seen inside the new police department headquarters, and what can you tell us about that? It's open. I know I drive by and it looks beautiful.
The police headquarters are open. They had a very brief open house for the public in November when they did their ribbon cutting. I unfortunately was out of town on that day, so I've not been in the police department for any reason. And
that's good, I guess.
Yeah,
right?
That's good. That's a good thing. But I know that it's open to the public. We of course have had our reporters in who are able to get photos and such inside. It's a beautiful, beautiful place, and our police department is so deserving of it. They have needed this for many, many years. So I believe that if someone goes in or arranges something privately ahead, that they can go in. Of course, right now
Yes.
It's very difficult.
Exactly. Hey, what becomes of the old police department?
That's a really good question. Nobody really has an answer to that right now. I believe the town would like to sell that property, but please don't quote me on that. Right now, the emergency communications are still in the building. So nothing is going to happen until they're out of there and comfortably ensconced back into the 191 South Main Street new office. But, at some point, the town will be wanting to do something with that property.
Sure. You talk about property. One of the other issues that I brought up in WPKN this past week was housing and Fairfield Hills. Talk to us about any updates you may have on that. Anything else going on in housing in town?
Beyond what we had in the paper last week, the Planning and Zoning had another public hearing, a continuation of the public hearing that involved the housing up at Fairfield Hills last night. And I am waiting to hear from our reporter who listened into that meeting as to, if they're still continuing for more public hearing, because it's something that's of great concern and great interest to people in town and has been for many, many years. It's obvious to everybody who lives in town that something has to happen with that property. And there's fear from some people that not everybody understood what they were voting on in the referendum. They aren't sure that people understood the impact of housing up there. So, there's a lot of people in many, many surveys who have said, we don't want housing up at Fairfield Hills. We want it to be an open campus. We want commercial. And I think when people think commercial, they're thinking, small businesses, things that are going to attract people and be useful to the people who use it as a public park. So, the one good thing at the January 7th meeting was hearing that planning and zoning and the other boards that have to approve any proposals aren't just going to do it without more input from the public. They want this to be something that is harmony with what people in the community want.
And that's exactly why this kind of story generates interest on the radio and in the pages of the Newtown Bee. Who's that reporter? Give him a shout out. Or her. Give her a shout.
Her. Yes, Alyssa Silber is our reporter who's been following this for us in recent weeks. And she will be reporting on this again in next week's issue.
Any other items that might be of interest?
Well, budget season is upon us.
Yeah.
We're taking a first look at the municipal budget and a very first look at the school budget in this week's issue of the Newtown Bee. And of course, there's going to be many, many follow-ups before this is all ironed out. It always starts out with some pretty big numbers that frighten people. And those are always fine-tuned. We'll be looking at what the individual school budgets are, what they are hoping for this year, the support that they are looking for. It's a very different year for the schools, especially. And the municipal budget, you've got people taking a look at that too. And, this is all just the very preliminary, here's what we think Newtown needs. And then they'll be looking for public input. People need to listen into these meetings, and people need to make their voices heard if there are things that they're concerned about. It doesn't help our elected officials if nobody tells them we like this or we don't like this.
What is the school update this third week of January? It almost feels like it's like September now.
Well, it is for a lot of the kids. The older students, the middle school and high school students, just went back to school full time in school on the 19th. So far, so good, but it's early. Our younger kids, our elementary school and our Reed intermediate school kids have been back since January 4th full time, and so far they still are. It's all on a day-to-day, week-to-week sort of thing, but our schools are working very hard to keep the staff and to keep the students as safe as they can and to do what they can to make this a good learning situation. It's difficult for the teachers. It's difficult for the administrators. It's really difficult for the families.
And the wild part is that there's really no blueprint for this. This is all uncharted territory and there's no end in sight. Certainly not this school year, right?
No, there's really not, because it all depends on how people work to make sure that this does not spread, on how people decide to buckle down and say, we're not going to do family gatherings, we're not going to do parties, we're not going to do sleepovers, so that this doesn't spread any further. That has a lot to do with how our schools are able to stay open.
You hear that, Mom? I wish I was joking, but there really is still a lot of, the pressure comes from family. It does. Well, we've come full circle in our conversation. For folks who want to sign up and get the print edition, they do that online, ironically, right? That's the best way to do it?
No, you can do it online, but you can also call our front office at 203-426-3141, and we are happy to take subscription information that way.
Great.
You can stop into our office. We're happy to take subscriptions any way you want to come to us.
Now, this is a very handsome red building. Where are you located? We
are at 5 Churchill Road in Newtown. As you're coming up the hill, you're going to see us on the right before you get to the flagpole.
Nancy, anything you'd like to add for this week's edition?
I just want to say thank you to all of the businesses who continue to advertise with us in a very difficult time. We look forward to seeing more advertisers as we work our way through this pandemic. And we're thankful to those who continue to support the Newtown Bee.
Yeah. All right, great. Thanks so much.